deputy governors, which was, and then we had the banks. So the committees on economic development, the committees on financial markets, those are the committees that brought out a lot of the initiatives. Everything you see from Cashless Nigeria to VPN to the Power and Aviation Infrastructure Fund to FMDQ, all of that came out of that process of people just putting brains together, arguing, debating, criticizing in an open and very democratic manner. And ultimately, I think the model of the central bank working with bankers as a think tank for one weekend in a year, just 1 weekend, forget the fact that I'm a regulator, let's talk. I think it worked. And later, of course, I moved to Calabar, which was nice, and we had all the nice parties and the dancing and all that, which also helped. But that was great. And I think that process, far more than anything else, is what brought all of this out. So, did I imagine together? The funny thing is that I have never been a treasurer. And in my time as a risk manager, 80% of the credit in Nigeria anyway, and I think up till now, was banking book credit. So, and Sarah knows, when I became governor, I basically said, look, I know what my strengths are, I know what my weaknesses are. I've never been in operations, I don't know about IT, and I'm not going to start learning about computers now, okay? So, Tunde Lemo, I will tell you what I want to see. I want to see interoperability, I want to see this, I want to reduce clarity. I'll tell you what I want, you go and figure out how to deliver, okay? The central bank did not have a financial markets department. And the reason was, frankly, we're all dealing with banking book transactions. It was at that time we said, look, if we really are talking about developing the financial markets, we've got to rely on people who are experts. And the good thing was, Ike, who was on the economic development team, was a treasurer. So he had strong financial markets background, and Shola and of course the entire the international banks, okay, had that in the Citibanks, Standard Chartered, Stanbic, brought their international experience to that, and we're ready to learn. And we brought in someone in financial markets, working with Sarah to do this. So to be honest, what was I thinking when we talk about FMDQ? I was thinking of our plans for having a Nigerian International Financial Center, like DIFC, it was one of the initiatives we're going to Dubai. And I would say, if you ask me, did I imagine it to be, I would say that I'm still expecting more, which is I would like FMDQ to actually be the core of the Nigerian International Financial Center, but I think you're on your way there. I'm very happy to see what you've done with CPs. As you know, it was one of the biggest problems we faced. My first real circular in CBN was on CPs, and someone forwarded me an email. One banker sent him the circular and said, "The bastard," but because we knew that the CPs were really the beginning of finding out where all the bodies were buried, and I'm glad that you've addressed that problem, or you're working towards addressing the problem. I'm very happy to see what to do with the foreign exchange market. Until we get that right, we're going to have major issues. And I think people just don't understand that if you don't get the transparency in forex, if you don't, if you create arbitrage opportunities, you simply move all the business away from transactions tied to goods and services to speculative activity. And I've said this before, you create a situation where speculation becomes profitable, and you're surprised that the real economy has become unattractive. I mean, you created the situation. It was the result that had to come from that. And I think FMDQ can help in that sense address that. But I'm amazed by what I've seen, and I like all the videos and the screens. There's a touch of class. I said, this is Ike, and you've done extremely well. But while we're on stories, I think I'll tell one story that nobody knew.
Oh, yeah.
When I was being appointed governor of Central Bank, obviously you go through a confirmation process. So I called Ura and Coco and said, look, you know, let us not underestimate these senators, you know. Somebody can actually write them questions that they don't understand and come and ask me, you know, and I'm not prepared for it. So let's go and anticipate everything. So we went to Ura's flat, and I lay on a couch, and we had Coco and Ura fire off, I think, for 2 days, Monday morning to evening, everything from the name of the IMF managing director to to the West African Monetary Zone, and so on. And many of these issues around financial markets and the risks and the market, all of that. Now, obviously, the senators didn't ask those questions, but in a sense, the amount of preparation and I had to, because there was already a lot of noise about somebody being from Kano, somebody who read Sharia law, going to, going to be governor of Central Bank. But the amount of preparation that went in, and the breadth of topics covered, actually helped sharpen my thoughts, so that by the time I walked into CBN on June 3rd, you know, I had even greater clarity on what needed to be done and what should be done. So I'd like to thank you, Coco and Wura, and Wura, for that.
Thank you so much, Your Royal Highness. It's very nice of you to acknowledge that. We have our own stories about eggs without onions and meetings in the middle of the night, and you'll send us messages to say, I'm on my way now. Somebody just asked me a question. Let's dig up the details. But it was our pleasure. Before today's session, which is why, and by the way, let me just tell you, KK told Akin to enjoy himself. He told me to do hard talk. And that's what I've come prepared for. I went back to our various lists, and it was amazing just how many of those line items you ticked one after the other. So I have a whole bunch of questions here about leadership. Leadership in terms of what it takes to conceptualize an idea, what it takes to communicate it, and what it takes to drive change for the betterment of Nigeria. And I will go back to FMDQ as an example. It's been mentioned already, you had to work with SEC, you had to work with the Financial Services Regulation Coordinating Committee, you had to work with the bankers, you had to work with COG. Not everybody understood and agreed initially. What is that question mark? What is that drives you in a leadership position to want to go through that pain, through the sacrifice, as they said, to get change to happen? What motivated your leadership of this FMDQ initiative? Because people would say SEC provided the license, but we would never have gotten there without the regulatory and the practical financial and other support that you provided and drove through.
I think for me, in general, anyone who has any aspiration to be in any kind of leadership position needs to have a sense of self-worth. I mean, a lot of the problems you have in this country are there are many people who are ready to be in a position for 4 years and 8 years, have it on their CV that I was X for 4 years or 8 years, and not be able to say what they achieved and what they did in those years. You know, and I think those are people who don't have any sense of their own self-worth. Now, if you begin from that premise, and if you really, really want to achieve, then the only thing is what are the, who are those that can help me do it, and how can I do it, and basically continue. It was clear to me, and I think people who were close to me like Ike knew, that the moment I walked into the central bank, I made up my mind I was going to be there for one term. Sarah knows this. I was very clear that I had 5 years. It was very clear that I was going in at a very bad time because of all of the crisis. But I also knew that if you really worked hard, you could achieve so much in 5 years. You didn't need 10 years to deliver on that. But we needed people. And just like Ike said about the compliments of central bank, I think I was also fortunate in the quality of people we had left in the banking industry after we'd done all the cleanup. The quality of the bankers, their willingness, their commitment, their passion, and their desire, and their sense of self-worth, because everybody wanted the Nigerian financial system to clean up its image and be a benchmark. And I think that ambition and that commitment was important. You had bank CEOs who were running their banks, but who put in about the same number of hours they did running their banks, into this whole process that was for the industry. And I think we all agreed among ourselves that, look, anybody can achieve anything if you really don't care who takes the credit for it. So people were more interested in what the outcome was. And there was a whole interconnected. I think that process, working with the banks, working with the regulators, gave us a unifying vision. So in everything, we had environmental considerations, we had gender considerations. I was actually, as I was saying earlier, I was elected an honorary woman. For somebody said for what I did 4 women, someone said for what I did 2 women, and somebody, but at the end of the day, it was all about, about women, gender. What we did with the VPN, when we started VPN, I remember when the conversation started, we had been waiting for the national ID card. And VPN, and everybody was working on their own unique customer ID. And out of nowhere, in the Bankers Committee retreat, somebody said, well, look, why don't we just have unique ID for everybody in the industry? It had never been done anywhere. Again, I think that the fact that we were ready to do things that hadn't been done anywhere else. When we did this unique ID that we have in Nigeria, I don't know about now, but at the time we did it, no country in the world had it, where you would come with your biometric ID, and whatever touch point it was, the banks, the microfinance institutions, everybody had access, using NIPS, and it was amazing. And and what we can achieve in terms of customer referencing, credit bureau, security, fraud detection, the potentials, are just enormous. And I think we haven't even taken advantage of 10% of what that unique ID can do. So I think just being able to have a clear vision and get people to buy into it, but also having the flexibility to listen to superior argument and understand that you do not know it all. And obviously, there are things that I felt I knew, and if I felt I knew them, I didn't listen to anyone on them, But there are many things I also knew I didn't know, and I was ready to, so if people try, in my field, I say, look, I know this, I know what I'm doing here. But many things, like financial markets, I had never worked in treasury, So the details of, I left to Sarah and to financial markets. All I said was, look, if it works, we all take the credit. Okay, if you mess up, Sarah, it wasn't my field. The same thing with the same thing with operations. So when Ike says Sarah said, come and negotiate with me, she knew that at the end of the day there would be nothing like, it was director of financial markets. So if anything came out of her. But I think really, it's all about, we're all leaders ultimately, operating at different levels. And I think recognizing that everybody is a leader, everybody brings something to the table, and having that atmosphere. It was funny. The bankers were my friends. We were friends. We had fun. We would go and dance, and yet we were able to maintain that clear line that there was a regulator. And there was, for example, none of the bank MDs would call me on a regular issue with banking supervision, because I would not. You deal with banking supervision, and if banking supervision penalized you, you pay. There was nobody who could come and say, please talk to DBS for me. And if you did, I say, go back and talk to the director of banking supervision. And everybody respected those lines. Nobody took advantage of that friendship, which is, again, a great credit to the to the system, that nobody took advantage of that friendship to try to, and I think it worked. So I was lucky in that respect also, and I thank everybody who, and of course the central bank staff. I've always said one of the best collections of human beings. All they need is the right leadership, and that's.
Thank you, Your Royal Highness. I have 2 questions for you, and then I'll let you go and we'll continue the program. The first one is that at the time you were the CBN governor, you were arguably the most dynamic and effective advocate for the Nigerian economy in the globe. So we would joke that you would go abroad and come back with money. Today, FMDQ has as one of its objectives to be an ambassador for the financial markets globally. What are those elements, those traits, those characteristics that make you a credible ambassador for the Nigerian economy globally?
Okay, I think my collaborator on this has just left her seat, Bola Adeshola. I learned how to be an ambassador for this country as Chief Risk Officer of First Bank when we started going out on international roadshows. And Kaidesi and all our consultants, and we would go at that time with Bola, who was head of corporate banking. So the 2 of us represented First Bank, and would go. I remember on one trip we went to 6 European countries in 5 days. Just moving, and I think when you're sitting across the table from someone, the first question they ask is whether you know what you're talking about. And which is why, as a country, we have to keep asking ourselves, do we have round pegs in round holes? If your Minister of Trade talks about trade, he should know trade. If your Minister of Finance, he should know finance. If you send someone abroad to discuss infrastructure, discuss the power sector, they should know that sector. If they don't know it, they should please make it. And please, if you know that you do not have the competence for a role, do not accept it. I think this is something that we need to learn and prepare. You've got to be prepared because you don't know what questions are going to come. The second thing is being honest. When in 2009 we took over banks, there was a panic all over with corresponding banks. I remember Deutsche called us, and they were getting the feedback. They called us and said, look, there is a big panic, And I said, fine, you know what? Get all of them together in London, about 500, just put them together, come and talk to them. And we went, and all of you were there. And what we did was, okay, guys, you've been saying the Nigerian financial system had a crisis, you're not being told the truth. Now these are the facts. We've opened everything up to you. These are the bad loans. These are the banks that have a crisis. Okay. Now you want to punish us for being honest. Okay. We've told you this is the enormity of the problem, and we're saying that we have the capacity to deal with it. And it's amazing. After that, people just calm down. Just to know that you were honestly. Hello. Okay. So just to know that you're honestly talking about the problem and that you knew it, and I think when you try to market this country, and at this point in time, honestly, there are things that make it a bad product to market. You still have to be honest enough to recognize that these are issues that we have, and then what are we doing to address those issues? Right now, I am the chairman of the Kano State Investment Advisory Committee, and we negotiated this with the so instead of me criticizing, we said, okay, look, you're going to do it, okay? So I'm chairman of and I've done a second trip to China, and I go and sit with first with the Chinese government initially, and then now with Chinese businesses, and say to them, look, we love this relationship with China, but we do like the way it's been built with Africa. And my view on China and Africa. I've written on that. I have nothing against China, And I say you have Nigerians who come to you and they're looking for loans to build roads for your companies. You have those who come to you and they want to sell raw materials to you. That's not what I want. Okay? What I want is for you to come and invest in Kano, to produce these goods you're selling that have killed our industries in Kano, and to create jobs. Let's look at how you can make money while contributing to development. So you give them ideas. I went to a company that produces solar panels, and they were looking for me to see if we could help them sell their panels. And I said, no, I'm going to sell your panels. You use silica, you use aluminium. We have that in Kano. I said, you know what? Kano may be poor, but we have a lot of sunlight. Okay? Come and set up a factory and produce the solar panels in Kano, and you'll have a market in northern Nigeria, in Niger, in Chad, in Burkina Faso, and you're right there. So you create the jobs, you produce your panels, you sell your panels, and contribute to economic development, or high-yield variety of seeds. And, when you talk to them and they know that, you're telling them, look, I'm not going to come and tell you that we have electricity 24/7. I won't tell you we have security. And I tell them, this is the reality. But when China started in 1974, you didn't have as much electricity as I have now. And you guys, so I assume that you know how to deal with problems and how to overcome them, and that's why I'm coming to you. When I go to countries and they say, well, I don't have power, you don't have infrastructure, you don't have security, I'm like, excuse me, if we had those things, would I be here? Where would I be here? I mean, I would come to your country and I'll be at the beach. I wouldn't like Chinese tourists, because they're not. I won't be here looking for your $1 billion. The reason I'm here is because we don't have those things, And I think when you have that kind of conversation, and people really know that you know what you're talking about, that's the best for the country. But when we go and either react defensively or pretend, the world is global. There is nothing people don't know. You go and tell lies. Once you tell one lie, you're finished. Because if you've told one, you can tell 100. And I think we've, so for me, FMDQ, this is a very good story. And I think what the story is that the story of Nigeria is not all bad. Yeah. Because this is one good story that you can see. And this is one story that can be a benchmark for other good stories. And if you have several more like this in finance, if we get a first-class regulating the power sector, we've had fantastic ideas. There's nothing in the power sector strategy that's not fantastic, but why hasn't it worked? We need to have more and more and more of those, and I really think that that's all we need: intelligence, honesty, ability to communicate, and then who are you talking to? If you're going to address an audience, send somebody who speaks good English. The things like that, because you could be very smart, and then you go and talk and excuse me, people need subtitles, and so these are the kinds of things that we really, really need to work on.
Thank you so much, Your Royal Highness. My last question for you before your closing remarks is really perhaps more to the management and leadership of FMDQ. You said something that struck me just now, to say that you always knew you had 5 years. So it was really about taking bold steps and picking your timing. The previous conversation, there was a whole bunch of stuff about what FMDQ needs to do going forward. Deepening the market, derivatives and all sorts. There are also some internal transformations that FMDQ must be bold enough to do. You talked about whether or not the CBN and the governance arrangement was a long-term or temporary issue. When we were consultants for FMDQ, there was this idea that easy does it. Don't rock the boat too much. Start, and then gradually you'll be empowered to do more. Is that really the best way? Because if you had done that, a lot of the things you achieved in your 5 years you would not have achieved. What would be your advice around the reforms, the change, the transformation, the revolution that is really now ahead of FMDQ for the next 5 years?
I think it's important whenever you find yourself in a position to understand your context. Now, there are times when you need to be aggressive and very fast. There are times when when you have the time to take it easy. There are times when, yes, the best thing is to take the bull by the horn, as it were. But then, if you go take the bull by the horn, make sure you're strong enough to hold that bull. You know, so you do not overestimate. The great thing about the central bank was that, in terms of the act, the CBN Act and BOFIA, it gave the governor a lot of leeway to do things. And look, when we started with given the enormity of the crisis I faced. Before I appointed financial consultants, Sarah knows we appointed lawyers. And I basically said to the lawyers two things. First, I want you to make sure that every single thing the central bank does is in line with the law. I do not want anything to be overturned by the courts. So you are responsible for that, okay? So you've got to basically, you have the last word. If you say don't do it, we'll not do it. But second, I want to know every single power I have, because I want to use it 100%. Okay, because I had a crisis and I needed to, can I remove a bank MD? Under what circumstances? You know, can I take over a bank? Can I sack a board? Can I change management? You know, so they went into BOFIA, so we all knew exactly what we could do and what conditions, what terms. So if we had, and there were situations where it was very clear to us that we could not save those institutions and leave the persons in place. But the last thing you want is to have someone who's robbed a bank blind, and you remove them, and they go to court and they say that you violated their fundamental human rights, you know, and you're forced to return, and you're forced to work with someone that you know should not work in a bank. So I don't think the MD of FMDQ has anywhere near the powers of the government central bank. So however, I think understanding that the central bank is critical and you need the support means that you should cultivate that relationship with the institution, because central bank can help you and can protect you. I know I did that with the banks. I mean, it was very clear. We had cases where people would come and try to influence the removal of a board member. I would say, no, you know, this really, it's not your province, you know, it's not your job. Or you have state security saying they want to go into, say they've investigated a bank and giving you a report from NSA's office that they checked it. They sent their spies into a bank, wrote a report, and they give us, well, I have banking examiners who have gone to banks. If they haven't given me this report, you know, I'm not going to look at this. You know, it's not, I'm not aware that the NSA has any regulatory oversight powers, you know, in a bank. So I think just being able to work with an institution that has that level of freedom to help push the market, and the responsibility for the development of the market is very important. So cultivate it. Sometimes going too fast can be a problem. And I'll give you an example. I came from the central bank, my stream ruling issues, and I became Emir of Kano. And I'm concerned about a number of things. I'm concerned about the levels of poverty. I'm concerned about our failure to make a demographic transition, about people marrying 3, 4, 5 wives, producing 20 children they cannot take care of. You know, having them, I can take care of my children, Sarah. You know, having them on the streets, not going to school, having malnutrition, you know, and basically in an environment of development, and to address the issue of the population transition. And so we try to force through reforms of Muslim family law. But we underestimated the level of resistance that, you know, the average Hausa man feels to an emir trying to curtail his freedom to marry 4 wives when he feels that his religion gives him that right. And it's so difficult to explain to people that the right to marry and the right to procreate is not the right to starve and the right to produce illiterates. You have to have you have to be able to take responsibility for the children that you produce. But there was, after some time, I realized very quickly that I was moving too fast. And things that may seem very clear to you and very obvious do not. So now we've moved back and said, okay, you know what? Let's focus on the single silver bullet that no one can argue with, which will achieve the same results, which is keep focusing on educating the girl child. Okay? Keep pushing, make that the topic. Have girls remain in school until they're 18, 19. Once a girl is 18, finishes secondary school, she knows about contraception, she knows about family planning, she's more likely to resist you marrying a second wife and third wife. If she's working, seriously, if she's working, she knows the opportunity cost of having a baby every year. So she's not going to have 8 babies, while she's in a working career. So it's more long-term, it's smaller steps, but it probably is going to be a far surer way of achieving the population transition than changing the law. Because you can change the law, all it takes is for 2 imams to stand up on the pulpit and say this law is un-Islamic. And for people to feel they do not have to obey it. And the truth is other Muslim countries have done it, other Muslim scholars have done it, so we've got to go through the process of bringing Egyptians and Tunisians and Algerians and Moroccans who are scholars to come and talk to our scholars and explain to them that, look, we're Muslim countries, but your population is simply getting out of sync. All the issues we have, from Fulani farmer clashes to Boko Haram, all of that has to do with the population of Nigeria in 1960 was 45 million. Today it's about 200 million. Half of that population is under 20. Why wouldn't you have a crisis? And if you continue producing these children, without any kind of regulation or control, by predictions are we're going to be 400 million by 2060. The land area has not increased. We've had desertification, we've had desalination, we've had erosion. We've had a reduction in water resources. You're basically setting up the country, for implosion. So we've got to deal with demography. We've got to deal, even as we deal with financial markets. But one question you haven't asked, which I will answer, is, when are we going to start seeing a very clear transition in the balance sheet of banks with more and more long-term funding on the balance sheet? Because that is the key. And that's what I hope FMDQ, you've done the UBA bond. We need to, if you look at a typical European bank, 70% of its balance sheet is bonds, maybe 10% current and savings accounts, maybe 10% equity. We need to have that, because of the maturity transformation risks are too high. And so long as those risks are there, and there's a limit to how much the central bank will continue doing intervention funds. Central bank cannot do it. Okay, the banking industry has to, and FMDQ, you have to find a way of basically transforming these savings from current account balances into long-term investments in bonds that would allow the banks to then finance power, to finance infrastructure, and to finance, and even some of what we see as short-term education. Building schools, teacher training is a long-term process. You talk about out-of-school children, it will cost you X amount to train a child, but it's not about putting a child in school in year 1. Educating a child is from primary 1 to end of his secondary education. You look at about 12-year, it's a 12-year project. So we need long-term money, even into education, into the scholarships, because that is how you have development, and so that's my question. When will this be a major project for FMDQ, and how long would it take?
Thank you so much, Amir. This really is a wonderful segue to my closing comment to you, which is that you've been speaking about social issues, education you've touched on. And FMDQ now has its committees set up in the capital markets committees and subcommittees, one focused on the real economy and making an impact. As parting thoughts to FMDQ, in the next 5 years, where are those areas where you would like to see them really touch the lives of the Nigerian people in a concrete manner?
Okay. Nigeria, as far as the economy is concerned, is not one country. And I think this is where we must begin. If you look at poverty numbers, you look at the MPIs, okay, the multidimensional poverty index, the incidence of poverty in Lagos State is 8.5%. 8.5. In Zamfara, it is 91%. If you take averages, it's 20% in the southwest, 80% in the northwest. Almost about 76% in the northeast. Okay, now this is where you've got the largest populations. You've got millions and millions and millions. And this is about, look, in Kano today, I don't know how many people know this, in Kano, 58% of the children under 5 suffer from chronic malnutrition. 58. 17% have acute malnutrition. 48% of the women of reproductive age in Kano are anemic from iron deficiency. So you've got these high maternal mortality rates, high infant mortality rates that are tied to nutrition. And then you've got all these other issues tied to the lack of education for the girl child, you know, because of the rates of dropouts. You've got early marriages, unregulated polygyny, and you're just producing these children. We're in a classic Malthusian situation where people are dying, and they don't. It's just Malthus. It's just that the population is simply one that cannot be supported by the resources available. So they die of malnutrition. They die of lack of health care. They die of violence and so on. So I think for us to really look at development, and I said this with African Development Bank when I went to Abuja. I said, look, if you come to Nigeria with money and you come to Lagos, you can invest in light rail, in overhead bridges, underpasses, and so on. And one day they're going to say, you know, for 15 years I've been here welcoming you from the airport. You know, now I'm going to start stoning you. You know, so I think I like the idea of your green bonds and all that. I think, how do you raise finance, for example, to build high-quality schools, to train teachers? How do you raise finance? Look, we still, RATEF, basically nutritious food, we import. We have every single thing you need to produce it, but we import from South Africa. And UNESCO will bring in, and the DFID will bring the food. You give a poor man the food for his child, he sells it in the market. When you can use local materials to provide this nutritious food. So I think really thinking what is development, and development is about the bottom of the pyramid. And I think for many of us, we think of development in terms of our lives. You want these beautiful roads, you want these aircraft, you want these airports, you want these deep sea ports. For 90% of the people out there in some parts of the country, you're talking about how do you save the life of a child and just give him nutrition? How do you give him a life chance by giving him an education? And many of the issues we complain about, okay, have to do with ignoring that. I complained a lot about people not sending their daughters to school. I became emir. I would go to a village and there's no school. So how does he send his daughter to school? How? Or there is a school, and I don't know how many of you know, but only 20% of the children who finish primary education in government schools in the north can read and write. They spent 5, 7 years, 6 years in primary school. They can't read and write. So if you're a villager, your daughter spends 6 years in school, she can't read and write. There's no secondary school. She's sitting at home doing nothing. She's 13, 14. You marry her off to the next man who comes to marry her. Because the last thing you want is then for her to come back pregnant and for you to have a stigma and be seen as the father of a single mother and be ostracized in the village. So we deal with this thing as if it's a demand problem. It's not a cultural problem, it's a supply problem. We need a massive investment in schools, in teachers, in scholarships for the poor. And then we can get to a point where when they have finished their schooling, when they've started working, they can now afford to send their children to private schools. And then we can move to a Lagos situation where 60% of the schools are private because the demand is there. But I think we've been blaming the victim for too long, treating this issue of education as if, oh, some people just don't want to educate. They want to educate their daughters, but where is education? The supply is not there. And when I say supply, I mean supply at the right price. And that's where capital needs to go in. That's where funding needs to go in. So for me, these are the two issues. We need to create jobs, we need to invest in education, and then we need to do a demographic transition. And look, if we do that, there is absolutely no reason why this country will not be another miracle in the next 20, 30 years.
Your Royal Highness, thank you so very much. We always expected that we would hear nuggets of wisdom from you. You would fire us up for the next journey ahead, and you have not disappointed. Wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thanks, Roy.
Yes, please. Thank you, sir. Yes, picture. May I please have Dr. Alade, Mr. Aigimokwede, and Mr. Akindawodu join them in the pictures, please. Can I also please have Mr. Aku presenting the chairman and Mr. Onodele join as well? Thank you very much. And we'll just present. That's what I'm doing now. Yeah. Okay, we'll just go right into the recognitions quickly and presentation of some of the awards. I'd like to call on Mr. Aku to please present the awards to the awardees as I call them out. Thank you. I'd like to start with Mr. Akinsawa Daudu. I had spoken earlier about some of the reasons why we are recognizing particularly these four, and then we'll speak further about the other awardees. As I had mentioned before, he was the... Congratulations, sir. I'd like to call next Mr. Aiboje Aigimokwede, who, again, as we had spoken about earlier, was the inaugural chairman and leading architect of the FMDQ, of FMDQ's exchange, of the FMDQ initiative. He displayed unrivaled passion and commitment in promoting FMDQ at the Bankers Committee Forum, and he took, what? And he led the industry in securing the registration from the SEC, like as he mentioned to us. He led the board in operationalizing FMDQ's mandate to drive market development, to foster transparency and a better organization in the fixed income markets. He established board governance structure, which he spoke about, and what we acknowledge that is still in place today. And interestingly, I was smiling when you spoke about world-class standards, because we noted that as one of the things that you had instituted, and that is one of the strong one of the strong areas of our culture which we still promote today. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for steering FMDQ, for birthing FMDQ and steering us in the right direction. Congratulations, sir. Thank you, sir. I would like to call on Dr. Sarah Alade. Again, as we had mentioned, she's the immediate past president, immediate past chairman of FMDQ, drove commendable the mandate of FMDQ in the fixed income markets. She provided active support for the establishment of FMDQ when she was the deputy governor. As in her tenure as a chairman of FMDQ, we had some we recorded some key initiatives like the commercial paper quotations, the pioneer listing of the federal government bonds and treasury bills, the launch of the OTCFX futures, the launch of FMDQ Academy, launch of FMDQ Debt Capital Market Developments Project, the pioneer listing of the Eurobond for the federal government, and introduction of NAFEX, amongst others. We would like to thank Dr. Alade for all her sacrifice and all her and the leadership that she has given FMDQ over the period. Thank you very much, Ma. Congratulations.
I must add, since you didn't add that part there, that when we had a major challenge with pricing, the banks, we were almost having a civil war until she put her iron foot down. And that was what gave us the way out. Coco would be struggling today if she hadn't resolved the pricing. Thank you, Madam, for that.
Thank you, sir. And for this segment, I would like to also recognize our special guest of honor, who I'm sure from everything that we've heard, we can understand why we're recognizing him as one of the regulatory visionaries who granted approval for the establishment of FMDQ during his tenure as the CBN governor. This decision has, I'm sure as we all know, changed the landscape of Nigerian financial markets, and we're grateful for that. His firm stance as regards capital contributions and the self-regulatory functions of FMDQ were crucial in the delivery of FMDQ's mandate. His strength and existence would like to recognize His Royal Majesty Mohammed Sanusi II. Would like to thank you for your vision and for seeing much further than a lot of people could see at the time in supporting FMDQ. Thank you very much, Your Majesty. Congratulations, sir. Thank you. Not yet, sir. Thank you. So I spoke about another set of awardees that I would like to recognize, and I would go through them. I would run through them. when we heard everyone speak today, we had a recurring name, the Financial Markets Dealers Association. And obviously, that's where FMDQ was really birthed from. From the individuals who drove it to the association who has carried it over the period, who carried the dream over the period, we acknowledge that the association has played a significant role in FMDQ's history. FMDQ was conceived and promoted by the association. The initial approval to go ahead with the concept was indeed obtained from the board of FMDA, from the board of trustees, and they carried out all the engagements with the consultant on the development of the plan and operationalization of FMDQ. The board of trustees have shown, and the governing council of FMDQ have indeed shown courage, enterprise, and they have indeed sacrificed in ensuring that FMDQ got to where it is today. Would like to thank FMDA and would like to recognize them for this. Would ask the current president of the FMDA, Mr. Samuel Ocheho, to receive the award on behalf of the association. Congratulations. Okay, again, would like to speak to some other institutions, and we've categorized them as the regulatory visionaries in the institute when we were in the promotion of FMDQ. We've recognized the Central Bank of Nigeria, who approved the FMDQ's, the establishment of FMDQ at its bank as the Bankers Committee, who took ownership of the initiative and gave its support for building the necessary capital, and whose contributions were received from FMDQ in terms of capital, and their continuous support has indeed been received by FMDQ over the period. Would like to recognize the Central Bank of Nigeria and appreciate all their efforts thus far, and the efforts and the support that we will continue to get in the future. I'm not sure they're represented, so we'll acknowledge them. Thank you very much. We would also like to recognize the Securities and Exchange Commission, of course, for approving the registration of FMDQ, for the foresight and collaborative spirit that they have readily provided to FMDQ's initiatives. They've led the development of the capital markets and provided FMDQs with capacity for evolution and growth. The SEC would, I mean, we can't talk about the initiatives that we have come up with over the period without acknowledging the SEC. I would like to thank them for their continuous support for over the period. I'm not sure they're also represent their. Oh, wow, okay, I'm sorry about that. So we have a representative from the SEC to please receive the award on its behalf as a regulatory visionary. Congratulations. And lastly, in that category, we would like to recognize the Debt Management Office, who supported FMDQ significantly over the period by migrating the primary dealer market makers to trade federal government bonds on FMDQ's systems. Again, for listing the FMDQ's FGN securities on FMDQ. The FGN bonds, and even the treasury bills in an unprecedented form. FMDQ's growth would not have been as impactful without the support of the DMO throughout all the decisions that have been made over the period. I would like to acknowledge the Debt Management Office with an award. If we have any representative currently in the debt management office now? No, we don't. Thank you. Congratulations. No. Okay, so we'll then move quickly to the third category, which is the regulatory visionaries. And indeed, we'll then like to recognize someone who, during his term as the DG, the DG of the Debt Management Office, offered tremendous support. In fact, some of the things that I had mentioned, the support that we had received from the Debt Management Office over the period was indeed under his leadership. I would therefore like to recognize and appreciate Dr. Abraham Wankwo as he receives this award. Congratulations, sir, and thank you. Thank you. And lastly, we would like to recognize a category which we call the Champions of FMDQ Initiative. And they played a significant role at the time when FMDQ was conceived, doing a lot of the back work in putting together the paperwork and the all the necessary engagements with the SEC and other regulators and other stakeholders over the period. We have 3 in this category who worked tirelessly with FMDQ at the time and have continued to work with FMDQ even till date. Would like to recognize Management Transformation Limited. I would like to call Dr. Wura Abiola, the MD CEO, to accept the award. We'd also like to recognize Professor in his first few years. No, he's not here. We will receive this on his behalf. Thank you very much and congratulations, sir. And lastly, we would like to recognize FDHL, who again championed the process alongside Management Transformation Limited on behalf of the company. Very much, and congratulations to all the awardees. Yes, sir, thank you. We're just going again quickly to speak about someone who we consider, who unfortunately isn't here with us today, but sent a representative from IFC. Thank you very much, Mr. Jing Donghua, who has been an avid supporter of FMDQ. I would like to present him today with the Lustrum Personality Award. It's the first time this has been done in FMDQ, and we considered Mr. Hua worthy of this recognition for all his support. He has supported us over several conferences. He has visited us at the exchange. He's supported our initiatives even from the IFC perspective, and he's one who indeed is a driver of change in the financial markets in Nigeria, and a partner. Mr. Jing Donghua would like to present to him, and that's when he visited the exchange, would like to present to him an award as the Lustrum Personality for FMDQ for 2018. Would like to ask Mr. Andrew Cross to please pick up the award on his behalf, and would like to ask Mr. Onodele to please present this to Mr. Cross on behalf, to Mr. Jingdong on behalf of Mr. Cross on behalf of Mr. Jingdong. To Mr. Cross on behalf of Mr. Jingdong. Wow, thank you. Yes, Lustrum Personality over there. Mr. Cross, please, before you leave, we'd just like you to take your address quickly before we move on. Thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everybody. If I can recognize the invitation of FMDQ to speak, if I can acknowledge His Royal Highness the Emir of Kano, or may I call you SLS now to take the opportunity. Can I acknowledge the board members, distinguished guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and I hope I have all the protocols will be accepted. It's a term I've learnt this morning, and so I'm hoping that you'll allow me that. I'm always a little intimidated when somebody says, speak briefly, because I have substantial comments from my boss, Jingdong Hua, and so I would like it reported back that I did deliver his extensive speeches. But maybe you'll allow me an edited version. I'm also absolutely delighted to be here, and I must admit, a completely selfish reason. I realise that cocoa is a bit of a good luck charm. So let me explain that to you. If you look at the SEC chairperson at the time, Aruma Ote, you'll notice that after the SEC, she went on to become the World Bank Group Treasurer. If you look at Jingdong Hua, his association with cocoa, he has just been appointed the World Bank Group Treasurer. And if you look at Andrew Cross, so that's my very, very selfish interest in being here. I have some comments from Jingdong, and it's really around the absolute importance of local currency and the absolute importance of institutions like FMDQ in terms of infrastructure. We always talk about infrastructure in terms of ports, rail, roads, but also financial infrastructure is hugely important. It's that underpinning, that foundation that I think touches on some of the themes that came out in the previous discussion. It enables the transmission of capital from where it is to where it needs to be. But let me talk a little bit about recent crises. If you look at Turkey, this year local currency depreciation in the Turkish lira was at 1.40%. So for those institutions that had borrowed in US dollars, they had immense difficulty. The lira has appreciated back, but it's still depreciated by 25%. It's a very stark lesson in the need for companies to be able to borrow in their own currency, for companies to be able to borrow in naira. And it's a lesson that we've seen across Asia. I've just finished working in Asia for the last 3 years, and Asia learnt this same crisis back in 1997. But they learnt the lessons, and I'll touch on those later on. Let's not also forget how the oil crisis has impacted oil-producing economies in this continent and others, and that local currency depreciation has left corporates that borrowed in dollars, that borrowed in euros, that borrowed in yen, very, very exposed. And this is why the role of FMDQ is so core, so essential, so necessary. Because local currency financing, capital markets, protects a client's balance sheet. It allows the company to focus on what the company was set up to do, to run their business, not to be worrying, speculating, being concerned about FX rates. That becomes a distraction, that becomes a speculation for what the real purpose of the business is, which is why the IFC is so focused on this, because investing in the private sector ultimately creates jobs and ultimately shares prosperity. The IFC views local currency financing as part of sustainable private sector development, and as an institution, it's absolutely committed to expanding access to local currency through working with local entrepreneurs and through capital market innovation. And I think this is why the association with COCO and FMDQ goes all the way back to 2013 on one of the Jingdong's first visits to Nigeria. I had been working in Nigeria since 2008, and I had cherish the memories of stepping out of Lagos Airport into the rich vibrance that is the Nigerian society that meets you. And if you remember in 2008, that was the sounds, the smells, the energy were in abundance when you would get out at Lagos Airport. Jing Dong came back to Washington, D.C. and said, I've met this chap, Coco. He's quite energetic. And I'm thinking, I've got a relative statement here. I've met a number of Nigerians, incredible energy, and Jing Dong is going, this chap's quite energetic versus that. And Jing Dong says he's quite energy and idea that this was a great partner for the IFC to work with. It's clear we all have a vested interest in local currency capital markets. It can appear capital market issue, and we'd had many meetings with the Central Bank of Nigeria on this. And the key to that was, how can we make a contribution in this market, a real contribution? How can the IFC issue Naira-denominated bonds in the local market, listed here under Nigerian law, regulated by the SEC, approved by the central bank, signed off by the Ministry of Finance, that ultimately are about moving capital from those that have it, insurance companies, pension funds, and banks, to organizations, to companies that need it in which to build their futures. And again, local markets can appear to be a dry subject, but it's all about the future. When we look at countries' growth stories around the world, we repeatedly see capital markets playing an important role in the economy of a country. Apart from one or two oil-producing countries in the Middle East, there is not a single country that has achieved economic prosperity at the OECD level without a deep, liquid, functioning capital markets. And you'll notice I'm sort of picking up aspects of gold that I think are so relevant. The global competitiveness, the liquidity, the diversity that's so... Think about Asia in '97. There is that saying, don't waste a crisis. And in 1997, if you looked at Korea, Taiwan, Thailand, and so on, all of them suffered immense damages to their economy due to depreciation. But what did they learn? So if you look at the corporate bond market in Korea, as a percentage of its GDP in 1997, it was 0%. Now it's 128%. Korean companies fund themselves in their own currency. If you look at Singapore's market, 12% in 1997, 83% now. If you look at Japan, 24% in 1997, 211%. One of Jing Dong's favorite comments is that if you look at the US, if you look at Europe, if you look at the UK, one of the keys to their success is they fund themselves in their own currency. They invest in themselves. They channel savings from institutions that have it to companies that need it to create jobs, to share prosperity. Capital markets is not a dry subject. It is about the future. And the trajectory of FMDQ in 5 years is amazing. I have 2 children. I have 2 daughters. I remember what I was told was the first 5 years in their development is key. And this was resonating in my mind as we celebrate the completion of the first 5 years of FMDQ. I just got a very subtle nod there that I've been talking for too long. Remember, you are telling Jing Donghua that I delivered his speech. You'll see I've quickly turned to the last page. If I can leave you with 2 messages, though, about the IFC, our operations, our belief, is that capital markets are not a luxury, they are an absolute necessity. And if I look at the slogan for FMDQ, an institution that IFC has been associated with, that Jingdong is proudly associated with Coco as a friend and has charted that growth. If I can say one thing, I notice it says tiny footsteps, lasting strides. What about great leaps? Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. And that subtle nod was sort of between me and you, but it's all out now. We will like to just play a quick video from Mr. Hua, who sent us a video on, since he wasn't able to be here. It's a short one. We'll just quickly.
My name is Jingdong Hua, Vice President and Treasurer of IC. Warm congratulations on this historic milestone for FMDQ and a very happy 5th birthday. On behalf of IC, I have the great honor and gratitude of accepting your last term award. I'm very humbled and yet feel happy to play a small part in FMDQ's journey so far. I'm very sorry that due to unforeseen circumstances, I'm unable to be with you in Lagos today. But you're hearing from IC Deputy Treasurer Andrew Cross, who, like me, has a great passion for building capital markets to crowd in the billions and trillions of finance needed to create a vibrant private sector in Nigeria and across Africa. I first met Coco back in 2013 when he came up with this inspired idea of creating FMDQ OTC securities exchange in Nigeria. Coco asked me if there are similar journeys traveled by other countries. I said yes, and taught him to look up a relatively new Chinese capital market self-regulator called NAFMI. Coco did, and as people say, the rest is history. I'm happy that from that point on, I was able to witness an amazing journey FMDQ has traveled. In 2015, I joined the FMDQ Debt Capital Market Development Workshop, and again, a year ago, I spoke at your Debt Capital Market Development Conference and was thrilled to launch your DCMD Sustainable Finance Subcommittee. How far you have come. Today, FMDQ is Nigeria's foremost debt capital market, foreign exchange, and derivatives over-the-counter security exchange. Strategically help to transform Nigeria's financial market through its gold agenda: global competitive operational excellence, liquidity, and diversity. Nigeria is already one of the most dynamic emerging market economies in Africa and an engine room of reform and innovation. Nigeria is blessed with a large, useful population, an expanding middle class, and a fast-developing domestic capital market and growing international investor appetite. To achieve its economic and social development goals and aspirations for critical sectors, Nigeria, like many East Asian nations and the United States before it, needs to build a comprehensive debt capital market which should rival the size of Nigeria's GDP, not a fraction of it. Deep and liquid capital markets are the most effective way to build and connect savings to allocate financial resources efficiently in the economy. In Nigeria, the corporate bond market as a proportion of GDP is still in the single digit, but it does not need to stay there. There is great scope to evolve. Encouragingly, Nigeria's market infrastructure and regulatory framework is already in place, and FMDQ is at the heart of that process. While the global economic landscape and financial markets remain challenging and uncertain, it was high time we came together to focus on what can be done to achieve this urgent goal. That is why the FMDQ 5th anniversary in Lagos is significant, gathering government officials, regulators, international institutions, and captains of industry to focus on the future. Thanks to FMDQ and COCO's leadership, you will seize the momentum, and IFC is proud to partner with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cross. You can kindly extend our...
My name is Jing Donghua.
We heard that already. Just in case. Kindly extend our appreciation to Mr. Hua. Thank you very much. We'll just go now to some quick testimonials and goodwill messages. I'd like to call Mr. Sam Ocheho on behalf of FMDA to say some words. Thank you.
Journey. We've had our quarrels, we've had our fights, but the market always come out triumphant for it. And that will continue, I can assure you. Because if we must come up with a world-class financial institution, as has been said here today, we'll need to continue to have that deliberations and fight. I guess my colleagues in the room know what I'm talking about when we talk about fighting. But it's a good one. Most of us see FMDA as taking over our meat. But again, it's not taking over our meat. They are our baby. If you don't know, we are the second largest shareholder. I like saying that wherever I am. We're the second largest shareholder, and they can continue to create the world institution. FMDA will continue to get rich by all standards. So thank you very much for the vision and for what has come out of FMDA. The market is proud. We're all happy, and we'll continue to look forward to the products, the development that will come out of it. Today, I've heard a lot about derivatives. We're looking forward to that. We're looking forward to trade all the exotic products in the market. We are tired of plain vanilla, and we'll continue to work with you to be the anchor for that. Thank you, FMDQ, for this great work. Keep it up.
Thank you, Mr. Ocheho. I'll just call 3 people to speak, and I'll just say in advance so that they can prepare for it to come out. Would like Mr. Jack Delaney, Jack, to speak. He was the COO of FMDQ at its inception. I would also like Dr. Wankwo to please say some words, and would like a staff of FMDQ to also speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your attention, and I have to begin by saying thank you very much to the board of FMDQ for inviting me back. It has been my pleasure to have witnessed the growth, actually the beginning and the growth of the market in Nigeria. I first came to Nigeria in 2005. I worked for the United States Treasury Department, who had a clear recognition of the things that Mr. Cross highlighted about the need for the government to be able to finance itself in its own currency. Excuse me. Dr. Nwankwo and the DMO team were very instrumental in developing the market, had the vision, but more importantly, they accepted the message from outside sources. That's not always an easy thing to do. But I would also commend the bankers of Nigeria for their willingness to accept the message and to strive to develop the market. It's been an incredible success, an incredible journey. And finally, I would like to compliment Coco for his vision. FMDQ is really, as far as I see it, it was the vision of Coco. And I was very happy to be able to participate and to lend some support. So I wish you all the best in the future. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Jack, and thanks for coming back. I'd like to call Dr. Wankwo, and permit me to say I forgot to invite one person who has been very instrumental to the development in FMDQ as well, Mr. Bolaji Balogun, who please say some words as well. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Your Royal Majesty, the chairman and board members of FMDQ, the chief executive team, and other staff of FMDQ. Thank you very much for inviting me to this occasion. Actually, if I were certain that I was going to receive an award, I wouldn't have come, because I'm generally against awards, generally. Except that if it were coming from FMDQ, you would make an exception. Okay. I'm not good at remembering what happened in the past, what work was done, except I go back and look at the file and read the records. But I can only remember what the result is. And so I want to congratulate Coco, the management and staff of FMDQ for the great job they're doing. And I also want to use the opportunity to thank all the stakeholders that have been supporting them over the years. Certainly, FMDQ is a unique institution, and that has been said by a good number of speakers here today. The important thing about them, and that interests me, is the fact that they give some hope that it is possible to have Sussex, resources, in this geography, which is a rare commodity. Resources is a rare commodity in this geography. And so we are all inspired, and particularly for those coming behind us, for the children and grandchildren, so that they don't lose hope completely that it is impossible to have success in this geography. So I want to use the opportunity to, in a special way, congratulate FMDQ for showing that it is possible to succeed, that it's possible for something good to come out of this geography. And that gives an indication that in the last analysis, it is possible for the overall success to be achieved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wankwo. Thank you for coming. Mr. Balogun, please.
Your Royal Majesty, the Emir of Kano, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, let me start by congratulating FMDQ on its 5th anniversary. Let me commend the remarkable journey of achievement that it has had, but allow me to set a challenge over the next 5 years. I'm indeed, pleased that His Royal Majesty is here. And I want to place on record that His Royal Majesty was probably the first governor of Nigeria's central bank who had an agenda for one financial markets. When I look around the room today, it's not a good thing that I'm the only non-bank in the room. I very much believe that Nigeria's financial markets are all about the money markets and the capital markets. And I very much believe that the solution to all of Nigeria's problems are in the debt capital markets. That therefore requires all of us, all participants involved in the market, to be part and parcel of that agenda. I know very much that the board of FMDQ, pushed by Coco, is very committed to ensuring that we deliver on that agenda. I do think that everything that we need to solve in this country, whether it's our infrastructural challenges, our housing challenges, access to capital for SMEs, access to capital for agriculture, access to capital for manufacturing, all of those elements, this market has a very critical role to play in its developments, but we do so with one agenda for one capital markets, one financial markets in Nigeria, with the full involvement of all participants. And I look forward to working, Coco, with yourself and the entire leadership of FMDQ to developing and delivering that over the next 5 years. I wish you tremendous success as you do so. I commend the journey of achievement that we have delivered to date, but there's still so much more that we have to do. And I think when you think about our country and all of the difficulties and social challenges that we have, we must pat ourselves on the back, but we still all have so much more to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Balogun. And I'll call the last person, a staff of FMDQ, Uzamaka Etukudo, the first staff after the CEO in FMDQ.
Thank you. So it's a great honor to be here. I think you can already tell from my voice, it's a bit of a mix of, emotions. It's like cry, laugh. You join a company, you come in, you meet one person in the company and a couple of chairs. And you're wondering, is he for real? What is happening here? What sort of joke is this really? And it's funny because I took that challenge without really knowing where it was headed. I just saw the vision alongside him. He was so passionate and the dream about FMDQ was so real. So it was just a great opportunity to start something, and like every young person out there would think, sort of have your name in the sands of time as a builder, which is a rare opportunity because not a lot of people have that opportunity to start something new. Most of us just join already made things and, we're flying here and there. So FMDQ for me and has far exceeded my expectations. It's been a company of opportunity, that's been opening for people to grow. You'll learn. No 2 days are the same. Mixed emotions, like I said, it's been really tough. I must say, extremely tough. But of course, it's also been really fun when you look back at all the things, coming to fruition, and you look at all the initiatives that the market is able to achieve, and of course, all the lovely things everybody has said here. So I'm very proud to be here, and like everyone would say, it's my baby. Yeah, it's really my baby, and I'm just as excited as a good mother would be to watch it grow and, to keep growing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yuzi. And we will close quickly with Mr. Onodele, who will give the closing address. Thank you. Yeah, sorry. Sorry, just before we close, we will do the birthday thing and just cut the cake, 5th anniversary cake, please, before we go off quickly. Can we have the cake come out here? And can we have the knife, please? Where's the knife? Please, may I just invite our special guest to do the honors of cutting our cake, please? Thank you kindly. No, I meant honors. No, I meant plural. I said plural. Sorry, ma'am. Everyone up here, please. I will.
Where do I cut? Okay, so this is just to wish FMDQ a happy birthday, to wish FMDQ many more years of success and prosperity for our country. So we'll cut this cake. Sarah, please join me. You know, I can still order her because she's my deputy governor. So, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cody. Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, I think the day is fast spent and I'm struggling to have a voice myself because of the time we went to bed, not dissimilar to what happened in 2013. I hope this won't happen 2023. I'd like to recognize Tamsin Freeman. Tamsin, is she around? Thank you. Tamsin was at the 2013 event. Tamsin, I met when I decided I would take this job. I won't tell the story of how I was walked out of the central bank for wanting to take this job. So I decided I would travel to South Africa to go and learn the financial markets there and what to bring to Nigeria. And I went to the JSE. Tamsin was the lady that the CEO asked to engage with me, and we spent hours together. Thank you, Tamsin. For the last 5 years, she's been with us as a partner, encouraging and working with my colleagues at ESCO level. Gold. We have to thank Dr. Alade for allowing us to use the gold. It was the name for the project for which FDHLMT handled for the central bank in the empowerment of the financial markets. We thought FMDQ could move with it faster. I hope we have not disappointed you. Thank you very much. Now to SLS. At the time, the SEC was slow in registering. And Wira and I went to SLS and said, you know what, recognize FMDQ, let it start. Thank you for the wisdom shared to say we should wait for the SEC to license it and not just make it an institution the central bank will recognize. I'm sure my colleagues know that if we're standing only on the CBN recognition, maybe it will have ended at the 3rd anniversary. I won't say more than that. Demutualization. Again, that came up this afternoon. The board of FMDQ, highly dynamic, has already taken that step. The board has approved that other investors, apart from banks, should be part of FMDQ. The board and the shareholders have actually approved a capital raise that will make that happen. So we're going to have investment banking firms who will join FMDQ as members, as in shareholders, and also DFIs. Mr. Balogun, thank you for being our rever. This event is not for all the members. You are here because you have Mr. Bolaji Balogun, who has been with me as a partner and been with FMDQ people here may not know you're a director of NASD, another OTC exchange, but you have remained a true partner to us and a rever of mine. And I'm not surprised you've started dimensioning where FMDQ will be in 10 years' time. Bolaji will be speaking to us November 17, and is going to paint the picture of the future of FMDQ. There have been challenges thrown up today, and I'm sure the ESCO members would have been putting this down. We have to deliver to this ecosystem. Finally, is it bad? Finally, I would like to end with the stakeholders. First, with the SEC. To FMDQ, the SEC is more than a regulator. Apart from registering, the SEC allowed FMDQ to evolve. In actual fact, the ESCO members and the senior staff, anytime you travel out of FMDQ, a week by the time you come back, something major is being considered and is a major initiative. For years, the SEC allowed FMDQ to evolve. We wanted to be a market organizer only. The business plan, I joke with Wura, that we must never share that business plan with anyone. Because what FMDQ has become is not in that business plan. Although, if you read the philosophy, you can string the story. Today, we have the strategic role of being the financial markets diplomat, advisor to the government, and a catalyst to infrastructure capital in Nigeria for unlocking that capital. So SEC, thank you. I can see Abbas is in, and we have not started. You heard the numbers from Andrew Cross. We should be in multiples. If the GDP is over 80 trillion, the debt capital market of this country should be higher than that. The non-sovereign is less than 1 trillion. The FMDA, Mr. Cheo spoke to that. We don't fight FMDA. We see it as a body that promoted FMDQ. We have to keep engaging, and we believe we will have success together. From time to time, I make presentations to them. When we started, we had to introduce fees. Again, most people in this room might not know that the banks did not want to pay fees. If not for the intervention of the central bank. And in actual fact, 2 days before the Royal Highness left the CBN as a governor was when the banks decided to pay the fees. Thank you very much for having held the bankers committee that day. There's no way we could have been a sustainable business, which was what the board said, without having transaction fees and other fees for the value we offer. So the last bit is going to be to the staff of FMDQ. You know, you hear a lot of Coco did this, Coco did that. But Coco only speaks, and I leave the stage for them. And they are the ones that execute, that dream it, that support it. And they spend long hours. And we intend to work on that culture. It's the culture of value adding, the culture of world-class standard. When people leave you with a mandate of world-class standard, you're going to have rigor. It's going to be painstaking, and you have to be enterprising. So we're 68 today. Uzo Amaka was the first one. Thank you for coming on board. That probably encouraged others for buying and keying into that vision. But next year, we're going to define our new vision for the new 5-year strategic plan. It's going to be more audacious. I'm glad all of you listened to the challenges that have been thrown, and we've accepted on your behalf. I have accepted, and I believe we'll deliver, and I assure you we'll address the work-life balance. I think about how many ladies working here? Out of the 68. About 30 or 40 young ladies, Your Royal Highness. We will address it to ensure that, you know, it's not just about work. On Friday, November 9, we're going to have the Gold Awards for the first time. Hopefully, if there's any energy left, there'll be a bit of entertainment. We'll have all the members in the ecosystem. Clients, corporate will be in that room that day to have the maiden FMDQ Gold Awards. I look forward to seeing all of you there. Royal Highness, thank you very much. Dr. Alade, The story people do not know was after I took on this job, I was going to leave because the 4 bank MDs called me and said they will shut down FMDQ. I assumed duty August 1. August 5, a bank because nobody wanted to burn the company or raise it. And she said, you have to be patient. This is change. And I think the MI spoke to that as well. You can't run too fast. They are the owners, but they did not envisage in any way because they didn't have the vision. Thank you for the encouragement. I refer to you as my mother, but when I'm talking to you on the phone, I use darling, and the highness is always wondering what sort of mother-son relationship we have. To the vice chairman who is representing the chairman, he was my boss. He hired me into Citibank. An interesting relationship. For your boss to then become your friend and become your supporter. He's threatened not to come to the Friday event. And I reminded him, do you know how many times in Citibank we talked about OTC awards? Mr. Aku, I'm sure you'll be there. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I'm not sure what's going to come out anymore. I'm struggling. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Onodili. So we would please ask that we go downstairs now. And just to give a quick background, in November 2017, the SEC licensed FMDQ Clear Limited, one of the subsidiaries of FMDQ, and we would like today to hoist the flag of FMDQ Clear Limited to formally recognize the addition to the group. I would like our special guest to please do that with us. So we will just, if we can go outside to the front of the building, we would appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you, everybody.
Yes, no problem.